Thanks so much again to Software Heritage for inviting me to speak. My name is Ethan Gates. I work as a software preservation analyst for Yale University Library and also on the grant-funded EaaSI program of work, which was mentioned several times yesterday kindly by Wendy and Jess in their Software Preservation Network talk. So I'm really excited to jump in today and give you more details about what our program of work actually is and what we're hoping to accomplish. So I'll dive right in. What is EaaSI? EaaSI stands for Emulation-as-a-Service Infrastructure. And as I say, we are a grant-funded program of work hosted by Yale that started in 2018. We are co-funded by the Mellon and Sloan Foundations, and we are also an affiliated project of the Software Preservation Network, as mentioned yesterday. But we call it a program of work and not just a single project to try and communicate that EaaSI is actually quite a lot of different things. We are really an assembly of people and projects all around this central goal of developing improved technology and services to make emulation a more accessible and more frequently implemented tool for cultural heritage and research data and other digital collecting organizations to use in their archival and access workflows. So in addition to, when we say what is EaaSI and people ask what is EaaSI, we are, again, first and foremost, that like collection of projects, but we could also be referring to a particular platform. That is, EaaSI is also a particular implementation of a web framework called Emulation-as-a-Service, or EaaS, which was a server-based framework originally developed by the BWFLA, I believe that's Baden-Württemberg Functional Long-Term Access project out of the University of Freiburg in the 2010s. That platform is now maintained by essentially the same team out of Freiburg, now known as OpenSLX. And I think we have some representation from Urich and OpenSLX in the audience today, which is great. But what Emulation-as-a-Service is again, a web-based framework that allows people to remotely access emulators. So as opposed to some other forms of web-based emulation, we are not using JavaScript emulators. What Emulation-as-a-Service does is remotely run free and open source Linux-based emulation programs on a server, and then through a web interface of some sort or another, allow users, patrons access to that running emulator and interact with the legacy or guest software operating system remotely. So that's a lot of things to be both a platform and a whole program. So we've been going for 4 years, and the different deliverables and goals of the program we've accomplished a lot over those 2 rounds of grant funding that we've had so far. That's include, again, sponsoring further development on the Emulation-as-a-Service framework itself, including the ability to exchange data that is actual software and emulated environments between installations of Emulation-as-a-Service. So 2 different organizations running EaaS can actually swap and share data between them directly. We have also sponsored development on a brand new client, a brand new web interface specifically for EaaSI with improved user experience and UI design. Beyond the actual software platform development, we have also been using the EaaSI platform to gather information about historical software. There are many things you can learn about software only perhaps by running it in emulation, rather than only having a CD-ROM or a floppy or a disk image of that physical object. You can find way more information about, say, what file formats a piece of software can run, open, render, save only by running it in its originally intended environment. So we have a student team at Yale that actually runs and installs a lot of software and gathers that information. And then we feed quite a bit of that metadata to Wikidata via the Wikidata for a Digital Preservation project. EaaSI also includes, we've provided documentation, training, and support for using EaaSI or just emulation in general. Again, knowing that kind of in a rising tide lifts all boats scenario, that the more folks are using emulation and get comfortable with emulation as a tool and a technology in their organizations, the more useful EaaSI is going to seem as a platform for their workflows. So just generally getting archivists, curators, faculty, et cetera, more comfortable with using and accessing emulation. And this last bullet point is really the key part of the grant that we're in now. We're entering our third round of grant funding that will run through mid-2024. And that is all about taking all the lessons we've learned and the resources we've created and the software development that we've done and building a sustainable service out of that, past the grant funding into something that will stick around and be available to organizations hopefully into the foreseeable future. So that includes, creating business models and thinking through design for essentially paid support, maintenance, cloud hosting, all the things that we know people want from a digital preservation or access service in the modern era. But I think the easiest, perhaps, way to get people to understand what EaaSI is and what the platform does is just to do a very quick demonstration. So I will pull up, this is our hosted version of EaaSI that we support for some program partners. And this is our sort of new look interface that I mentioned. So what I'm going to do today is just demonstrate very quickly what you would do if, say, you have a file in your collections that is software dependent, that requires a legacy piece of software to open and render. In this case, I have pulled just yesterday a FileMaker Pro version 3 database from the Internet Archive as a sample file. I had never seen this file until yesterday. So I downloaded that from Internet Archive. I just uploaded it into EaaSI, where I can see the different kinds of software that I have imported into the system. We can see various, legacy software installation media, also several, old spreadsheets, old Word documents, video games, whatever you would like to try out. But I will highlight my FileMaker Pro demo and add it to my emulation project, which is our sort of mix and match screen where you can take legacy content and try to match it with a computing environment that has the software to address that particular piece of content. So I've already pulled up several options here. In this case, I do know, because of running file characterization over this particular file in advance, that it is specifically a FileMaker Pro 3 file. So we are going to want this environment that says Windows 98, also has Microsoft Access and FileMaker Pro 3.0, the software installed already. But if I didn't have that much information, if I only knew in general this is an old version of FileMaker, I could pull up several different options and try them quickly. And this is part of the benefit of the Emulation-as-a-Service framework, is we can swap very quickly from Apple systems to PC to open source Linux, all in one go, all in one interface. Oh, I'm going to exit that because I didn't highlight my object, but I've got my environment in my object. So I'm going to essentially mount that file into this legacy environment and pull up Windows 98. This is a point where in showing this to folks, we often have to adjust some expectations to remind them of that sometimes older operating systems indeed loaded slightly slower than they might be used to. We are also working on snapshot functionality, so that rather than having to sort of wait through booting screens and treat you all to the Brian Eno chime, you could just jump right to the desktop, but that's a pretty simple user convenience matter. I think, well, we'll see if we load it up. When I load in arbitrary files, basically what Emulation-as-a-Service does is pretend that that file, it packages it into an ISO and pretends that that file is a CD-ROM. That is just because the CD-ROM ISO file system is so broadly compatible across legacy operating systems that we don't have to worry about particularly what guest system you're trying to load your file into. And I think if I just double click, so this is an interesting, quick little error message. It's not really an error message, but it just is noting that the system settings, that the date and time settings for the database itself are not matching like what is set on the operating system. Again, often just sort of a user expectation thing that we have to set in terms of actually navigating and using old systems to prepare people for like, we can authentically recreate what an old Windows 98 installation would do when you load this file in, but we can't necessarily guide you on every aspect of how Windows 98 is going, of learning Windows 98 and old versions of FileMaker and what every screen means. But here you can see that database is open. I believe I can, yeah, cycle through some records here. Seems to be a database of Apple products from the late 80s, 90s. So that's just a quick overview of something EaaSI can do. I'm actually, I think, just looking at the time, going to skip for now this second video of some of our other functionality. But to highlight our benefits, I hope, I don't know what's going on the video there. I hope you all got your lights back.
We got the light back. Thank you.
So again, just as an overview of the platform benefits, so the benefits of using emulation as a service in emulation workflows, you could see by sort of centralizing the functionality of many different emulators in one place, you can very easily supply the right emulator to your patrons, whether you need, again, like a 90s PC or a 2000s PowerPC Macintosh or an Amiga or a Commodore, whatever you need. You can sort of centralize all that functionality and even pre-configure common and useful settings. We can, share, rather than needing to set up one software emulator on one desktop and get your patron to that desktop in order to access the emulation. Anyone can log in from anywhere and enable multi-user access to emulated collections. It eases creation of new environments, and we can also configure convenient ways for users to interact with environments, like allowing them to export files out of an environment or not, allowing them to take screenshots or not, etc., just depending on the restrictions of your collection. And of course, again, thinking broadly about EaaSI and us as a program and a partnership of institutions and as a service, not just a platform. Of course, there are benefits to joining in this collection of multiple organizations who are all using the same platform and thinking about these tools and how they apply to their collections, as well as benefiting from the hands-on support of the EaaSI and OpenSLX teams. This is just a smattering of some of the partners, professional organizations, academic research universities, Portico and IFCA think about complex web publications and scholarly access long-term. The Association of Australia's Academic and Research Network is setting up their own network in Australia, again, of different academic research institutions and museums, all using EaaSI in their time zone. These are all folks that we have talked with and are using to inform and give feedback on the EaaSI platform and move emulation services forward with improved user experience UI that meets real institutional needs. Just a high-level overview of some of the functionality that we want to add to the platform, much of it relevant to some of the discussions I think we've been having yesterday and today at this workshop. The ability to actually puppeteer user actions, so do things like I just did, like open a FileMaker database but do it automatically and save it into, say, a newer format, so that folks don't necessarily want to actually open up that FileMaker database in Windows 98. Perhaps they just actually want to use the data and pull it into the latest version of FileMaker or whatever platform they're using. They're not really interested in the emulation access part of it per se. We're thinking about ways to automate that. That's something that Yurik has been working on extensively, I know, so go bug him if you want to know more about that functionality. We've been trying to improve matching of software signatures, which is to say, again, just knowing, but just by looking at a file, identifying what software made it, what software should open it, down to the version and the complete computing environment. We are thinking about server-based software and how to emulate entire networks and say, like, can we run an Outlook server, but also multiple email clients that connect to that server so that users can, again, not just access the software, not just access the data, but get a sense of the way folks actually interacted with that data in a more accurate way. That is, they're intended to be run in a networked environment where you connect with other people. So actually stringing together emulation environments so they can talk to each other. And OpenSLX have also been working to genericize an emulator registry so that essentially we can load in any open source emulator that you could ever think of. So beyond the list of supported emulators so far, if you have a particularly favorite piece of hardware.
Okay.
I will quickly, I know that we have a few minutes, and I will just say that we have also had some challenges with creating an emulation services that are in the slides, and please take a look. I think these will be distributed, but I will go ahead and just leave some links and close off there so we have a few minutes for questions.